Welcome to Momentum Mode. My name is Mike Shannon, and alongside my co-host Corey Farringle, we'll be joined by Anar Isman, the founder of Ageless RX. And in this episode, we go into an in-depth conversation on how the company was built in its path to north of $70 million revenue and counting, and some of the interesting things going on in longevity. Now, before we get into the episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Kilpatrick, Townsend & Stockton, an innovation-focused law firm that both Corey and I have worked with for over 10 years. They handle everything from early-stage seed funding rounds to larger M&A and everything legal in between. And of course, Corey's ad tech-focused venture capital firm, Aperium, and my own company, Improve. We're focused on building the operating system for RIAs, independent financial advisors. Well, let's get into it. Welcome back to Momentum Mode. I'm Mike.
Corey.
And today we've got Anar Isman, founder, CEO of Ageless RX. Now, Anar, I'm going to have you unpack that. The tagline on the website is, what would you do with more healthy years, if I've got that correct. And the company's had incredible growth for the last 5-6 years. Open it up for us, please. What is Ageless RX? I don't want to butcher it. Tell us what you do, and then we'll go into how the growth and demand has grown.
Sure, yeah. Hey, guys. I mean, it probably starts with why first, and
Great.
Before we do the what. Back when we started, it was one of those things where I wanted to change the world, and I wanted to do something meaningful. And I couldn't think of anything more meaningful than slowing down aging. Like that, to me, seems like that biggest atrocity that's still out there that everyone just does nothing about.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if I told you, hey, what do you think about cancer? You'd probably say cancer sucks. If someone was here saying cancer is fine, don't worry about it.
Right,
You'd be like,
right.
what's wrong with you?
You're an idiot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or like, oh, the plane fell down, and what do you think? Oh, it's horrible. People died. So it's bad to die from plane crash, and it's bad to die from cancer, but dying from aging,
Whatever.
no problem.
It's
Sure.
just nature.
Nature, exactly. And so the idea was, how do we change the mindset? And I also went to a bunch of conferences and realized that it's not one of those things that's inevitable. It's actually, if we put more resources towards biology of aging, we could have like a material breakthrough that could allow us to live radically beyond conventional limits. And what's standing between us and the breakthrough is the resources. You know, and who controls the most amount of resources? It's the government, because they allocate budget, to projects. And how can we help them allocate it towards longevity? Let's have longevity and slowing down aging become one of the main issues for constituents, and the constituents will vote politicians who will then allocate the budget.
Interesting.
And while you're going through this thought process, you're working at a hedge fund, correct?
Yeah.
So how does a guy working at a hedge fund, Citadel, correct, right?
Well, listen, Citadel was 2011. It was a different one. Since then,
Different hedge. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you're working at a hedge fund. Was this part of a project, or this was more personal interest?
This was
that you went to
personal,
these
yeah.
conferences? Okay.
One of the potential, who knows, but one of the reasons why Ageless has been relatively successful is because it's something I would be doing for free.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
even if I get paid or raise money, I'd still be
that's
doing
amazing.
this for free.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing in the evenings and on the weekends, like researching longevity, thinking about it, going to conferences, meeting people.
But right off the bat, the story reminds me of Tim Heelskamp, who we had
Okay.
on, founder of 1440. He was at a private equity group. He basically follows his curiosity into a
Yeah,
successful
yeah.
business. I mean, you kind of did that as well. Like, who knows if following this train of thought could lead to any successful business, right? But it has. I think you're comfortable with us sharing the numbers. 70 million revenue this year, only founded in 2019. So going from this curiosity, this mission, to tangible business model and product proven in the market, how do you make those steps?
Yeah, well, so we thought, okay, how do we make constituents more interested
Okay.
and at the same time help advance longevity? And so the thought was, well, there's only so many things you can do in longevity, and one of them is like biotech, for example.
Yep.
Sure.
But biotech doesn't really have an audience until there's something that's working. But the direct-to-consumer platform actually has consumers and an audience. So we said, you know what? Let's do a direct-to-consumer business, and our what will be telemedicine, where we put you in touch with clinicians knowledgeable about longevity, who can give you access to certain interventions and kind of on the forefront of the latest longevity science. But at the same time, use our audience to evangelize to them and help understand that longevity is something that would be very important. Should be a top
Help me
mindset.
unpack that a little bit more. The product, you said telemedicine is basically the product. So unpack what the product is.
Yeah,
for
the
us.
easiest way to understand it would be like the hymns of longevity.
Okay.
Right? The hymn started a year or two before us, and people usually the biggest product for him was like Cialis, or like ED and hair loss. And imagine kind of for us, it's whatever can give you extra healthy years.
And it's like a subscription
business.
Okay.
Yeah, you come to us, and then the system will put you in touch with a clinician licensed in your state. They will review your information.
Now you take on a liability in that you can't be providing a subscription that something is going to be unhealthy. So how does my physician or my doctor get involved with what the recommendations are?
You put in your information, and then we route it to a physician or clinician, because it's not always a physician, but clinician licensed in your state, and then they review your information, and they can follow up with you if you have something in mind that you want to try, like a specific pill or injection or something, because you might have heard about it on the Huberman podcast. Then they may decide it's appropriate for you, and then they would approve it. An order would be sent to the pharmacy, and then pharmacy would ship it to you.
So how do you go from I want a longevity, and you're thinking about politicians and backing them and getting the government to invest, to finding this problem and finding this audience, right? This target market?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was also one of those things that was my own problem that I wanted to solve.
Okay.
Right. Longevity, for example, there's a number of interventions or drugs out there that have really good evidence that it could help you optimize your health and maybe even slow down some of the age-related damage. But if you went to your primary care physician and said, "Hey, doc, I heard about this, I read about this, would you prescribe it to me?" They would say no.
Right.
Because a lot of these things are used for other purposes, and clinicians really don't have time to stay on top of like what else it could be useful for. Like they're busy helping grandma and grandma stay alive.
Right.
They don't have time for a younger person.
Right. Ozempic's an off-label use,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
let me ask the obvious. Another Chicago founder, Braintree founder, Brian Johnson, center of a ton of attention around this topic of aging. My understanding of what he's trying to do is be the most forward extreme blueprint of experimental type treatment. In that curve, where's the subscription I'd get from Ageless RX versus what like a Brian Johnson is trying to do?
Well, imagine you follow Brian Johnson,
and
he does a lot of things that are very, very evidence based, and there's a lot of evidence for potential benefits of those things. And you said, well, you know what? I want to try to do some of those things. If you went to your primary care physician, most likely...
And he spends $2 million a year is like the tagline,
But not all of his stuff is the stuff that you can do with telemedicine. Some of it is like a hyperbolic oxygen chamber. You have to be there. Or, like a blood plasma pheresis where they take out your blood and put it back. You have to do it in the clinic.
I have a single Netflix documentary of knowledge on it. That's all.
But if you wanted something that is like, for example, microdosing on Ozempic, which there's a lot of potential benefits for people who don't necessarily need the weight loss, but could potentially benefit from other non-weight related benefits of Ozempic. If you went to your doctor, chances are your doctor would know what to do with it.
Right. Yep.
But you can come to us, and our clinicians are very knowledgeable on those things. And not only that, like we talked earlier about something like you had to build out of necessity that then proved to be useful. When we first started, a number of clinicians also weren't sure what should be the dosing or what should be the right protocol. So we had to figure out that. And for that, we had to create a whole like applied science function that actually does clinical trials. So since then, we've done a bunch of clinical trials and we collect a lot of data so that we can actually tell clinicians, hey, look, this is what we think the protocols could be.
So let me, without going into the science, because it was a business podcast, we couldn't even start you asking the full question. But all that's going through my head as a founder, hearing you talk, is red tape. On if I were starting this business and trying to get the go-to-market engine and find product market fit, you've clearly navigated it. How did you get through the red tape of all these stakeholders and sensitivities of bringing this product and service to the market?
Yeah, I mean, partially, there's two things that happened, right? One of them was the fact that HIMSS was already kind of paving the roadmap for us, right? And
so not a totally unbeaten path.
Not totally unbeaten path. Yeah, HIMSS was doing it, and for example, one of the things that maybe we were doing differently is some of the things our clinicians could potentially prescribe you are what's called off-label, right? Because there's no label for aging. Like literally, there's no label, even if there's a drug out there. And we should talk about that being
maybe Tom Brady had one, but
we can talk about that being like an issue. Like there's no label for longevity. But HIMSS was doing a bunch of stuff that was off-label as well.
Got it.
For example, right, like if there's a condition for like a premature ejaculation, but there is no drug for that, they'll prescribe you a drug that actually is used for like anxiety or depression, which might actually help you
Got it.
with some of your
Yep,
sexual
yep.
issues. So HIMSS was paving the road for some of those things as well. And then another thing that happened was COVID happened,
Okay.
and telemedicine actually became much more widely
Yes.
acceptable, even
Yes.
from the compliance standpoint and from people. So at the time,
So
COVID,
the curve accelerates on something environmental.
yeah, like the COVID at the time seemed very terrifying and could have even killed the business. But in rear view window, it actually was one of those things that allowed us to unblock a lot of that compliance and
Got it.
red tape. And more doctors, right? More doctors became, and clinicians became open-minded to providing service using telemedicine.
Right,
Because you're right,
right,
there's so
right.
many pieces. There's a compliance piece, and then there's also a piece of finding clinicians who are very knowledgeable.
It's like a two-sided marketplace almost, right?
Like Uber.
Yep.
Exactly,
Yep.
like Uber, except the driver is not a driver. The driver is a clinician.
Right.
The clinician needs to be comfortable using.
So you get
telemedicine.
into the COVID time, and you're already doing clinician acquisition, if you will, because you need the supply,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How does that change getting into the COVID world? Is it you keep doing the same things and they're suddenly responding? Did you have to adjust?
Yeah. In the COVID world, all of a sudden, clinicians are much more open to it.
They just-
all of a sudden, everyone, even like your primary care physician,
Yeah.
now is using
Yep.
telemedicine.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, clinicians are much more open to it. A number of our clinicians are licensed in a lot of states.
Okay.
Some of them licensed in all 50 states.
Wow.
And at the time you talk to someone and say, "Oh, there's a clinician licensed in all 50 states," and they're like, "Oh wow, like I never heard about that."
Yeah.
Now it's much more common.
Okay.
And
'Cause
one
I
other thing, just really quickly, that happened over the last year, for example, is a lot more telemedicine, and there's a lot of more people opening companies doing telemedicine focused on Ozempic,
Yep,
and
yeah.
weight
See a
loss
lot of
and
that, yeah.
semaglutide, and now all those companies have now trained and educated a lot of clinicians on telemedicine, and now. So semaglutide went through this phase where there was I don't know how much you know about this. There was a shortage of semaglutide, and what happened was compounding was allowed.
Yeah.
So compounding pharmacies were producing not the brand name, but the compounding version
Got
at a
it.
cheaper price, and there's a huge rise in companies selling it. Now shortage is over. Compounding is more restricted now, and now all these companies who ramped up are now actually shrinking. And it's actually an interesting environment where there's a lot of clinicians and a lot of talent out there that's been trained on telemedicine looking for a home.
Wow.
So
So let's talk about from the business standpoint. So you've had really fast growth employee-wise. So obviously start with a few. What's your employee count today?
70. 70, yeah, roughly around 70.
Really, that seems quite small. But
$1 million revenue per employee.
About
rough ratio?
$1 million per employee. Seems quite large to me.
Yeah,
but-
and, well, for that
Thinking
revenue
of
size.
Tim Hill's
yeah.
camp again.
Yeah, exactly. For that revenue size. And then how many clinicians do you have?
we don't know about the exact number, but
Yeah,
over a
range.
dozen. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got to manage that pool
Yep,
as
yep,
well.
yep.
So how do you think, where do I put people? Clearly, you're making sure you're cautious in your hiring, you're bringing in the right kind of people. How do you think about adding people? When do you decide it's time to add someone?
Yeah, we've been much more, in retrospect, conservative than we probably should have been. Right? We haven't raised a lot of money.
Yeah.
We've only raised $6 to $7 million.
Yeah.
And we still have a bunch of that sitting in the bank.
Wow.
So we've been very fortunate from that perspective. But at the same time, that meant that we've been very kind of careful in who we hire and maybe not moving as fast as we could have. And partially, I think the philosophy has been more like, oh, where is there a fire? Let's go figure out how to put out the fire. Instead of, oh, where do we anticipate we'll need to build forward to? So I think there's something we could have done better, and going forward we'll do a little better job. Is like, let's anticipate where we want to focus and build there, instead of just focusing on where something is broken and fixing that.
You mentioned that you haven't raised a lot of capital. That was a question that came to my mind related to the red tape that went through my mind. So did you capitalize right up front? And I'm curious how much upfront spend to get to, traction point one, like your first handful of users, or were you somehow able to bootstrap this?
Yeah, we bootstrapped up to the first number of users. And
Really? Okay.
It cost us a few $100,000.
Yeah.
And then we raised our, when we were at a few hundred users, sometime in 2020, in April 2020, we raised our first seed round.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a funny story there too, happy to share, but yeah, that was
I was going to say, what was the fundraising in COVID?
Yeah.
So April 2020, how'd that go?
terrifying, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
We were doing okay, and we had a few hundred customers,
Yeah.
and then I had a bunch of meetings set up with a lot of investors, and then COVID happened.
Right.
And every single meeting got canceled. Every single meeting
course, yes.
got canceled. And at a time I thought, oh, like, what do we do?
Well, I
This
mean,
is-
venture firms were like, are we still investing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Is this overnight? Is this long term? I don't know what to do.
For sure,
So they were
for
all
sure.
holding
Yeah.
the money, right?
Exactly. Everyone was holding the money, right? And the first-time founder, some of the
Right.
red tape concerns people had. Yeah, it was definitely very terrifying moment. And at the time, I was doing customer service because
Yep.
there was no one else.
Yep.
Even for the first maybe 1,000 people, I did customer service.
Oh,
and
wow.
maybe interesting takeaway for some of your listeners might be and to do customer service because you don't know who you're going to meet.
Yep.
And one of the customers, I was talking to, and also I wasn't doing customer service as in like, you know what, you have an issue, let me help you, goodbye. I
Yep.
was doing it more like, oh, how did you find us?
Listening,
Listening.
discovery.
It was a way
Yep.
of getting in front of the customer and listening and learning.
Exactly. And one of the customers, a gentleman named Josh Rosenthal, said, "Oh, like I want to talk to a CEO." And I said, "Well, that's me." And
It's like, no, you're the customer support rep. Send me to the boss.
Exactly.
I said, did he think that was good or bad? How did
Exactly.
that work?
Yeah. He's like, I love what you're doing, and if you're fundraising, I'd like to invest. And I said,
Wow.
yeah, we're fundraising. Actually, we're looking to raise $250,000. And he said, well, I'll give you $1 million. And we said, you know what? I don't know. And then in retrospect, that was very smart. Like,
Yeah.
250 was
Yeah,
would
in the
have
heart
been
of
too
COVID
little.
when you don't know what
Yeah.
liquidity is going to be.
Too
Yeah.
little. And so he gave us $1 million, and that kind of that's
Yeah,
how
so
it
let's go
started.
back to you on customer support. So is that an accident that you're on customer support because we're lean and all of a sudden we're getting more calls because it's COVID and so on? Or is that intentional in how you're going to gather information?
No, both.
Okay.
Like it's the fact that we're bootstrapping
Yeah,
and
yeah.
don't have any money, and also the fact that we're learning about customers and trying to figure out what else. A lot of our growth has been driven by customers saying, "Oh, thank you for providing the service, but you know what? I have to go to some underground pharmacy in Mexico or in
Right.
India to order this product. Could you please add it?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, people want it. Why don't we add it?"
Interesting.
So this theme of customer listening is
That
like
is
abundantly
crazy.
Yeah.
number one with founders that we talk to.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I
Any
miss it. Right? I
interesting-
miss it a lot
Yeah.
because I don't do it as much anymore.
Sure.
And every time I still do it, I learn a lot. And it's been harder than I wish to build that culture at the company for people to be like, hey, like people to realize how important it is to listen to the customer.
Yeah. So we had, we had Arnav from QB tell us he was putting his phone number in the first boxes that they were sending the QB devices out from. We had ShipBob founder telling us about being in a basement when they first discovered the opportunity, just asking others in line why they were in that basement.
They were
Right?
in line trying to ship something, ask everybody else, why are you here? Why are you
So
here?
we're hearing these quirky stories. Any interesting tactics or quirky methods around customer listening that you've discovered?
Nothing. I'll think about it, and maybe something will come to mind. But no, like customer service was
Just
the
being
one
the
where
customer
people-
service
That's it,
rep.
yeah.
That's
where
it.
People,
Yeah.
people come to you.
Be in
and-
the right place to hear it.
Yeah, and then we still do a lot of outreach where, hey, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
let's schedule time to chat. But there's nothing, and there's no
Yeah.
secret sauce there. And one other thing I want to do, actually, that might be one of those interesting things, is a friend of mine runs an AI company, and he was like, "Oh, like, let me show you something." And he created this phone bot for us, where like a bot can call you
Yeah.
and engage with you,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's surprisingly similar to human experience.
Crazy, right?
Crazy,
Yes.
crazy. And obviously, one of the very simple uses is we'll call you and we try to get you to buy something or use our service.
Sure.
But the other way to be call you and actually listen to you.
Yes.
And learn from you.
Yes.
And so I think we'll be doing some of that as well.
And I'm definitely seeing more and more of those. I on social media here, every once in a while, the person asks the customer ask what it turns out to be a bot. Hey, where do you live? Oh, I don't. I'm AI. And the person's like, what?
Exactly.
I'm on the phone with you for 10 minutes. What are you talking about? So
Yeah, we've been actually debating, and maybe we'll test it. Like, actually, do we want to tell people it's a bot,
Right.
or not? And what's a better customer experience? Are you misleading someone if you don't tell them it's a bot?
And I think there's cultural aspect to that, right? We as a society haven't figured out what's the norm yet. And we have to kind of work through. I mean, AI norms. What did it take us a decade to come up with web norms? We haven't come up with AI norms
exactly.
yet.
Exactly.
And what you expect as a consumer, like if I call, like we went to a spot where everybody who calls a support line expects it to be an offshore call center. right? So they just expect that's what they're going to have, which means there might be a language barrier and all that good stuff. We all expect that now, and it's just what it is. But now, is everyone going to expect I'm talking to AI when I call, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting evolution. How have you kept the culture of the company as it's grown? You've taken money. So let's start with, if we get into culture, did you have to form a board after you took an investment? Or
we have a board, but we didn't have to. No,
Okay.
We had very friendly investors who
Great.
didn't have any conditions, but we still have a board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did that forming a board change culture, drive numbers differently?
Yeah.
What impact did that have?
Didn't have any materially impact. Probably helped us make things a little more formal, which is good. Which is definitely
Time to grow up a little, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, but some of that, the upside of that was a little less for me than maybe for some other founders, because unfortunately I was a little bit more grown up at the time.
Yes.
Right. Like already spent close to 20 years at a hedge fund and spent a lot of time investing in, like my whole day was investing in other CEOs and meeting with CEOs. So I've had a taste of what grown up means.
And you had a view of what a good CEO looked like. So I'm guessing you walked out and were like, that's a good one. That's not.
Yeah. For sure. I definitely, it have probably maybe better appreciation than that I even understand of like how much value good CEOs add. Like if you look at the stock prices, there's probably 80% correlation between just a good CEO and a crappy CEO.
So in a quick like first line that comes to your mind, what does a good CEO do? What does a bad one do?
The bad one is very easy. Like I've seen so many CEOs who just are out there enriching themselves at the expense of shareholders, right? Like the whole like corporate model right now is so broken where the CEOs have a board, but board is a bunch of friends usually, and they decide compensation. And then even in the years when the company stock is down or revenue is down, they still make a lot of money. And also another thing I found about good CEOs versus bad CEOs, like a lot of CEOs are there just managing to a quarterly number, quarterly earnings, quarterly versus you got to manage to like a company enterprise value long term. And so I think I've seen a lot of that. And one other interesting thing that I noticed about good CEOs, good leaders in general, which I wish I was much better at this, they're all very, very well spoken. They're able to elaborate on ideas in like a very elaborate manner.
So do you think...
I think you do that well.
There you go. I always think, though, sometimes if I hear them talking too much, I think, they're too salesy. They're selling me too much, right? They're not as authentic sometimes. So there's a line that can be crossed, right? Where a CEO goes from well-spoken to salesy and not feeling as honest.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. So you're growing the organization. You're obviously dramatically increasing because you're few to know people. How do you instill a culture? How do you keep the organization the way you want, the kind of people you want?
Yeah, good point. I'll share some thoughts there. And also that might even go towards, now that I think about it, when you said like any of the things we do when you talk to customers, that point. One of the reasons we learn so much from customers, especially now too, but when I was doing customer service, is because that was like my life mission. That's all I did. Like all day long, I read the articles and went to conferences, listened to podcasts, and our initial users were people like that. So it was very easy to relate to them. And that's, I think, one benefit we have, that we're very mission driven. And I always tell people, like, if you're thinking about what startup and what your idea is, try to find something that you're really passionate about versus just an idea on a spreadsheet because it seems like a good idea, but you don't really care about it.
Like that's where I love to switch the framing of ICP, ideal customer profile, to the hero. It's they're on their hero's journey, and what role can you play assisting it? And once it's framed that way, and you pick a hero that you can like and be passionate about, then it truly is like following curiosity. You're not doing a spreadsheet research.
Totally. And everything kind of makes it easier from that perspective. And similar to the culture, right? I still interview every person who joins Ageless. And one of the things I always make sure to tell them is, look, we're very mission driven. We think aging is bad. Like it's really, maybe interesting to talk about, I don't know, but it's still very controversial to say aging is bad. If you went out there and talked to 10 people, 9 out of them would tell you, what are you talking about? Aging is normal. Aging is natural.
Right.
So
Well, that's why I asked where you were at on the kind of Brian Johnson spectrum, because it's such a polarizing, there's news clippings and everything being really angry about it. There's huge followings that are supporting. And so it is a polarizing issue. And you always put it whenever we're just hanging out casual in such simple ways of like, well, nobody would say, if grandma was, declining in health, oh, screw grandma.
Yeah,
right. And so when you or you compare it to the dog sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Share that thought.
But it's all changing, right? I mean, I remember when I was young and it'd be like, oh, grandpa's 65, and now it's like, 65, whatever, right? I mean, we are changing already in our views, but how do you confront it then? People talk about it as a potential problem.
I mean, it's difficult. It's a very uphill battle. People are notoriously very stubborn and resistant to changing their status quo.
Of course.
Like, so many examples of like, you're born into the world is this way, you don't able to think about outside of how it is.
You've talked to my mother, yes.
Self-driving cars. Like, oh my God, we should never have this. What?
Yeah.
They already had driving in San Francisco and much less.
Waymo's wonderful,
exactly. I mean, and then change comes and eventually people adapt to it. But same thing with aging. Whenever I go out, I always ask people, if you could live as long as possible, as healthy as possible, how long would you live? And 9 out of 10 people say, 80, 90.
Yeah.
Like no one says, I'd love to live to 200.
Because we all worry about quality of life. Right?
Partially that, but even if I say, what if you stayed vibrant or whatever, people still say, 80, 90.
Really?
Yeah, how come? Well, because of overpopulation. How come? Because of others. Always have this, like, all this.
But what happens when you bring the dog into the conversation?
Yeah, exactly.
I actually think this is an interesting framing.
Like that's what the dog is interesting, right? Like when I walk my dog and I talk to people about longevity and I say, would you like to live longer? People say, no, that's crazy. When I say, would you like your dog to live longer? Everyone says, oh my God, sign me up.
Really?
Yeah, like for sure. I mean,
well, I think in part of it too is the relative years, right? Like for us to grow a certain percentage longer, when you put it in the dog years, it's like, if I got my dog another 3 years, it doesn't seem like this extreme idea.
For sure.
Compared to us another 15 years or 50 years, I don't know.
Yeah, dogs are like an accelerated model of longevity because they age so much faster, and everyone wants the dog to live longer. And also, it's much easier to test an intervention. Because for me to test something on you and say it's working to slow down your aging, I'd have to follow you for 40 years.
Right.
Versus I can enroll a bunch of 7-year-old dogs and follow them for 4 years, and then I'll know, are they living longer? So actually, for the first time earlier this year, FDA approved a clinical trial for longevity in dogs.
Oh, wow.
So it's really interesting. Hopefully, it shows that it's effective, and then we'll have a pill that we could give, or intervention we give to dogs, just so they could live longer without a specific disease. And there's nothing controversial about that.
Right. Because everyone's, I want my dog longer.
Exactly.
And I wonder if the dog actually matched, quote, my lifespan, if people would be like, it's as long as me, it's good enough, right?
Probably. And then other area that's also, we haven't talked about it as much, but also another non-controversial, like a model of longevity is female fertility, right? Because female reproductive system ages faster than the rest of the organs, and they have a biological clock, so by the time they're 40 or something like that, like ovaries are not functioning as well. And if we said, let's try to rejuvenate female reproductive organs, no one says, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, there's massive industry around that, right?
Everyone says, let's have women be able to have babies as long as possible, delay menopause as long as possible. And so if we can do that, we can probably apply the same tools to other organs, maybe to your brain or to your heart, to your liver. So it's also another really, really interesting area.
I want to grab the clip and ask other industries their comparable analog to this, because if you reframe, you just gave us two with reproduction and then the dog. It's like you reframe the problem to a different context and people are seeing it differently. Like what other, in general relation to momentum mode, what other industries can borrow from just that thought process?
For sure. And he's like, there's some of it that I can arrive to, people can arrive to just by being in the industry and knowing the industry. And part of it, you'd be surprised how many times our customers tell us, can I order something from you for my dog? Like, can I give it to my dog? And we don't have any veterinarians, obviously. And then a lot of our customers also come to us because they say, I want to slow down aging so that I can be fertile longer. So they have something that could help, with fertility. And eventually I could see like Ageless having Ageless Pet, sister company, and Ageless Female Fertility company
Sure.
helps people with those aspects.
So what's
too.
fueling the growth then? So you're clearly saying that some percentage of the population of your target market isn't as excited about the concept, but yet you're seeing terrific growth. What's driving that?
It's a niche, so we're still very small, right?
Okay.
We've been growing, but we have, say, 50,000 active subscribers.
Okay.
Right, but there's still, the market is in
Greenfield.
hundreds
Yep.
of millions of people, yeah.
Got it.
And we've been very fortunate in terms of what's fueling growth. It's still niche, but it's much bigger niche than it was, right? You have Brian Johnson, you have Huberman, you have Peter Attia, you have a lot of very, very smart people.
Peter Thiel said he's going to live forever. Yeah.
Hopefully, I hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
And there's whenever you say live, like our media and movies, they always portray anyone who wants to live forever as a villain.
Right.
It's never like I want to, but forever is a very long time. Like now, average lifespan is 70.
Yeah.
Like, let's not talk about forever. Let's talk about going from 70 to 120 or 150.
Well, I think to your point, quality of life matters. My wife actually had both of her grandmothers live quite old, 102 and 98.
Wow, it's amazing.
But the 102-year-old had a great quality of life.
Yeah.
Like was going around, was active. And the other, unfortunately, her other grandmother had quite a few illnesses. And you watch the two of them and you're like, I want to live that 100. I'd take over this, right? And so that's part of the value prop is
For sure.
Do it better.
For sure.
I would focus, not that I'm your marketing team, but I would say, okay, you're focusing on the individual's span of life, go from, 85 to 105. But if you think about the framing of the grandkid, have an active grandparent until the age of 25 instead of 15.
Just put a grandkid in front of a
But they because that is like, oh, would you want the grandkid to have an active grandparent until they're 25 and 30 and at their wedding? It's like all your reframing stuff just makes it all a different conversation.
25. Do your wife know that?
Yeah, well, hey, you know what? I don't know. It's their choice.
It's an interesting space, right? I mean, and I even hesitate to call it a space. I don't think about longevity as a industry or a sector.
Yeah.
I think
It's
about
humanity, huh?
It's a movement.
Right.
It's a movement. It's a revolution. Yeah, it's definitely like this biggest atrocity. That's like, how they talk about how if I don't eat meat, so I eat fish, but I don't eat meat, and they talk about how if butcher houses had glass doors, or what do they call it? Like nobody would eat meat once you see what's going on behind the scenes. We live near a senior housing facility, and there's a big sign up front that has a old lady and old man dancing.
Yeah.
And then I actually see those people in there coming out, and they're all in a wheelchair with an oxygen. Right. There's no tango dancing going on. If you actually had like a glass wall, I think people would be saying, you know what, it's aging is the biggest cause of suffering.
Yeah.
Like if you had a disease that you'd get and then 2 weeks later it put you in a wheelchair and you couldn't take care of your basic functions, we'd say that's horrible, that's atrocity. Let's do something to not do that. Well, that's what aging does to us, except it's not in 2 weeks, it's in 1,000 weeks. But is there a big difference between like 2 weeks and 1,000 weeks? Like,
it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Like.
All right. Well, I'd love to extend the length of this episode, but we told you we'd get you out on time. Anyways, all right, Anar, Ageless RX, thanks for joining Momentum Up.
Thank you.